Welcome to Collision, the podcast where we discuss the fun and sometimes complicated collision of real life and trusting God. If you're curious or confused about how to engage the world we live in, we hope our conversation here helps. Now, let's get into this episode of Collision.
Well, welcome to the Collision Podcast. I'm here with Stu Jackson. Welcome, Stu Jackson.
And Matt's back. Hey, look at that. You guys got so tired of me. All the comments, we got them. And we understand that we should never let me be on here alone again.
You know, I got a lot of positive comments about your sitting in the lead position and having conversations.
Must be a different group of people then.
Yes, probably so. Where we're riding and who we ride with. And so,
Absolutely.
Yes. So Saul took me out. And so you and him interviewed last time talking about immigration, which was...
He was supposed to take me out. Did you get wings out of him? Is that the kind of takeout?
I'm not sure. I'll take him out to lunch and then make him pay for it. That's what it'll do. But anyways, it was a fantastic conversation. If you missed that last time, you can go back and check that out. Today, we are kind of heading into the end of the baseball season. And your Colorado Rockies.
Okay, if we're going to talk about them, the end of the baseball season started in May. Just saying. I mean,
that was unexpected. That's a legitimate laugh right there. Yeah,
sorry.
So, the Rockies, they won 2 against the Dodgers this last week.
Oh yeah. If there's somebody we know that likes the Dodgers.
Yes. One, Mike Zarnicki.
Oh yeah, Mike. My condolences. Too bad.
Yes, and I've been putting on the pretty heavy troll job going there. Although, Atani's out tonight. And I said, we'll run him off the mound too.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. We're going for it. And
you know what I say? If they run Otani tonight,
yeah,
we start one ringing Mike.
Wait,
we just ring and hang up. That's all.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
And then when he calls all frustrated, to be like, I don't know what's happening, Mike. My phone's just calling you every time the Rockies score. How weird.
So I've been rooting for the Rockies to make history by being the worst team ever. It adds some excitement to this baseball season. And so they need to win 4 games and their remaining 36 to do that. And they have 4 remaining games against the Dodgers. So it looks like they're at least going to tie the record. They just need to win 1 more. So that's where we'll just leave it right there. The Rockies beat the Dodgers, and we're just going to assume they're going to win the rest of their games.
Perfect. They don't win any others, but they win 4 against
the Dodgers. That would be fantastic. And so, speaking of epic troll jobs, You've been perusing on the Reddit, trolling Reddit feeds.
I would never go trolling.
And you found something that maybe we want to talk about today. So lay it on us.
All right, I just want to preface that the reason I've been trolling out there on Reddit is because of Matt. We're part of a men's group, The Pursuit. If you're listening to this, you're part of Crossroads, please come join Pursuit. Great opportunity for men to get together and just be brothers and enjoy that brotherhood and talk about what it's like to be a man of God. But we were talking, and it was the conversation of how Christianity's numbers at the moment seems to be shifting, which is a totally different topic, and we could go on for days.
Yes.
But it's a fascinating thing that maybe God's at work here, and the numbers of Christians are not declining anymore. Let's just leave it at that.
Right. And actually showing signs of life, particularly among young men.
Right.
Starting to go up.
And one of the things you said in our conversation was that, it's all this technology, and you go out there on places like Reddit, and you can see the vibrancy of the community of new Christians and stuff. So I went out and I thought, well, we need a topic for the podcast.
Yeah.
So I went out, I started looking, and I found one that I wanted to kind of bounce off you.
Okay.
See. So the question says, even if we assume that one particular religion is true, doesn't the existence of many religions at least prove that mankind likes to make up religious stories?
That's
lost my spot. Sorry. So mankind likes to make up religious stories, and that people have a tendency to believe them. How do you know yours isn't one of those? So they're cold asking.
Yeah.
Here's Christianity. How do you know it's not a made up thing? Because it's true. We like to make things up as humans. It's incredible. You talk to my kids,
Mhm.
My kid, I shouldn't go there. Okay. Derek, tell the truth.
Period.
Yeah, right. Trevor, truth. But it's one of those things.
Yeah.
How do we know that Christianity isn't one of those things that's been made up?
Yes.
And in this, thinking about it and talking to you, talking to Doug, our producer, one of the things that really hit me is I went and looked in one of the most dangerous places, the internet,
Yes.
for reference. And there's estimates anywhere between 4,000 and 10,000 different religions in the world.
It seems like a lot.
And it's like, okay, yeah. I have a lot of questions.
A lot of questions.
And you look at the big four, right?
Yeah.
You have Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism.
Yep.
Those are the big four. But in Christianity is the majority. So you look at that and you say, how do we know?
How do we know? Yeah.
I'm asking my pastor, my friend Matt,
Yes.
how do we know that what we're being told and what we believe and all those things isn't some grand story?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. And I think that, in the question is a pretty large assumption that if there are all of these religions that are out there, the assumption that the question asker is asking is, doesn't that just mean that we love to make up stories? That's the assumption.
Right. Absolutely.
And I would maybe reframe that and say, possibly the reason why there are so many religions out there is because we realize that there's something greater than ourselves, right? Like there's something about the human condition that is not content with knowing the finiteness of the 70, 80, 90 years that we live. Like there's something in all of us that goes, no, there's got to be something more. There's got to be something further than this. Like when I die, that's not it. And out of that then comes, I believe, a spiritual reality where we search for significance beyond this life. And as a part of that, certainly significance in this life.
Sure.
And I think that's what actually drives the narrative. Now, the question is still the question,
right?
If we can assume one is true, and let's assume the Christianity one is true, how do we know? How do we know? And the way that I would answer that question is that ultimately it all comes down to Jesus. That each and every one of us, we all have to make our peace with who Jesus is in this life. And so, very few people, maybe nobody, disputes that Jesus was an actual person.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, there's plenty of historical documentation that there was a Jesus of Nazareth who walked on this earth.
Yeah, and it's not just that documentation from the Bible. There
Right.
are other confirmed authors and historical documents that mention Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah. And so he's a documented human in history. And then even when it comes to the Gospels, in terms of like textual criticism, that's the kind of the science of determining whether texts of ancient past are, reliable, if they are what they are to be, so on and so forth. When it comes to the Gospels, they stand shoulders above most any other document historically that we have. Part of that is because there are tens of thousands of copies of those documents in that, but we have someone like Luke, who wrote the third gospel, and Luke still to this day is a renowned historian, not just in church circles, but also in the secular world.
Right.
That Luke was a historian. So you have this historical figure. It's backed by somebody who was a renowned historian during that time, this guy named Luke. And so when it comes to that, and when we put all of that together, the thing that really sticks is when Jesus in John 18 was asked by Pilate, what is truth? And there's this whole dialogue of what truth is. And when we get to a little bit earlier in John chapter 14, Jesus makes this claim, this very audacious claim that I am the truth. That one sentence separates Christianity from everything else. Because with those words and that claim, what he is doing is he's actually claiming to be God in that moment.
Right.
That he is the very representation of reality as it actually is. That he is God. So when we look at other religions, all other religions, the three major ones that you named, other minor religions, that all of them have a prophet who claims to really be the way to God, right? That they're the prophet that can show you how to get to God. Only in Christianity do we have Jesus, who claims not only to be a prophet, but also God.
That he is God.
And he's not showing you the way to God, but actually he's come so that you can find him, right? And so this now separates the major other religions to Christianity. And when he claims to fully embody the faithful representation of God, that he is God, therefore he is ultimate reality, then that separates it from every other religion. And so why this is all important for us is because Jesus claiming to be God puts him at odds with every other religion. So either Jesus is who he says he is, and that he is the faithful representation of God on this earth, or, as C.S. Lewis said, he's a liar, a lunatic, or he's insane, which the definition of insanity is the loss of touch with reality. It's the loss of touch of truth.
Right.
And so, if Jesus has lost touch with reality, then what he claims is therefore inferior to every other major religion. And so, when Jesus says that I am the truth, what he's actually doing is he is backing every single one of us into a corner and going, you have to make peace with who I am.
Sure.
Because I am either God, as I claim to be, and therefore superior to every other world religion, or I'm a liar, a lunatic, and just insane, and therefore inferior to every other religion. And so at least when it comes to Christianity versus the other ones, that's the separating fact. Now, for you and I, we're believers. And when Jesus said, I'm the truth, we go, I believe it.
Now,
right
now is one of those times that we need a dummy mic. And I can just drop it, be mic drop, we're done. Good to see you. That was 12 minutes.
12.
You guys have a good day.
12 minutes. Yes.
So I want to push you outside of your realm a little bit, because you're in this, you're the spiritual guy, which sounds terrible because I have no role in this other than to talk a lot. It's not like I'm not walking here and being like,
you're the everyman man.
I'm the everyman man, and the everyman that just, I have ADHD for everything I do. You want to hear something funny? Ask me to pray, because usually I'm like, Dear Father
Jesus, dear Father Jesus,
I don't remember. God, I love you. Man, that sounds good for dinner. I mean, it's really bad.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of push you outside of this, because I want to take it from a perspective of not necessarily the guy that comes to church, the believer, that's somebody that follows. And I want to push you a little bit more towards the historical context.
Okay.
Now, we have the Bible, and people have arguments against the Christian Bible. Well, it's just a bunch of stories put together. How do you have the stories from early on that people have just kind of tacked onto.
Yeah.
How would you respond to somebody who's saying, well, yours is one of the imaginary religions, and you've even wrote a book about it?
Yeah.
How do you respond from a historical stand to somebody that's questioning the Bible, questioning the historical accuracy of all of those documents that have been put together, all the books that have been put together?
Absolutely. So, where you ask, I think of a guy, his name's Bart Ehrman. He is the Distinguished Professor of Religious Studies at UNC.
Okay.
Dr. Ehrman grew up, had a, life, what he would call a life-changing experience with God, right? Gave his life to Jesus, went to college, began to lose that faith, has kind of gone down the agnostic road, where he would say that there is a God, we just don't know who that can be.
Okay.
And has become quite liberal in terms of faith life, in that. And one of the things that he does that's kind of fascinating at UNC, when freshmen come into his religious class, is he takes a quick survey. And, there's a bunch of evangelical Christians there who are fresh faces. And he asks them, how many of you believe that the Bible is true? They all raise their hand. And then he says, how many of you believe that it's infallible, without error? And, they raise their hand and say that they believe it. And then he goes, how many of you have read the entire Harry Potter series? And they all raise their hand. And then he says, how many of you have read the Bible all the way through? almost nobody raises their hand.
Right.
And then he makes the point, and you put your Bible that you haven't read next to the fantasy series on your shelf that you've read all the way through, and you want me to believe that you think that the Bible is true, right? So that's kind of where you're coming from, right? That when it comes to the scriptures, you have people who respect the Bible as truth and don't follow it. That's one category of people. You have people who believe it and follow it devotedly, or you have people who just reject it simply as a book of legends and myths. And so the way that I guess answer that question is going back to Jesus. Like, first and foremost, we have to make our peace with Jesus. And so there's plenty of things that people say that Jesus is, that he was a teacher. Sure, he was. But what do you do with the statement that I am the truth? You know, plenty of people say that obviously that Jesus had skill and that he had some ability to do miraculous things.
Okay.
Right? Yes, absolutely. What do you do with I am the truth? What do you do with Jesus? Because when it comes to, again, the historical context of the scriptures are valid as historical documents, but they're valid there. So then what you really have to say is, with the content within them, do I believe the content within them or do I not? And that depends on, again, how you've made peace with Jesus. If you come to the scriptures and say, I believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and that no one comes to the Father, to God, except through him, if I believe that statement is true, then by Jesus' own words, we believe the scriptures. Like when he speaks about the Old Testament from Matthew, he says, for truly I say to you that until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until it is accomplished. That what Jesus is speaking about when he talks about the law is the Torah, the first 5 books of the scriptures.
Okay.
And he's speaking it there as valid, that this is going to come to fruition, that this is going to be fulfilled, that the law that's there is real and dependable and speaks into our lives. Later on, he speaks about the prophets. And so that's like most of the rest of the Old Testament, right? That these prophets are speaking on behalf of God, and in their speaking on behalf of God, that the things that they say are true, right? And then we get into the New Testament, and what we have in the New Testament is Jesus really commissioning these 12 guys to carry on this message into the world. And these 12 guys begin to write letters and other documents that make up the New Testament. And those are validated, and Jesus commissioned them to do that. And so, again, you go back to Jesus. And so Jesus believed that the Old Testament was true. He commissioned these 12 guys to write the New Testament. And so we look at that and we go, again, if I believe that Jesus is the truth, then I have to take the scriptures as true and real and valid because Jesus did. Now, if you look at Jesus and say he was just a good teacher, then there's not an argument in the world that I can make for the validity of the scriptures. If you believe that Jesus had some good things to say, or he was just a man that there's a lot of mythology around, again, there's nothing that I can say to actually convince you that the scriptures are valid. Now, throughout church history, people have tried to use, that the scriptures are God-breathed and they were inspired, and useful for correction and rebuking. And that's a verse out of 1 Timothy. That is a great verse, but that is circular reasoning.
Yeah.
That the Bible is God's word because it says it's God's word.
Right.
No.
That sounds like parent reasoning. It is because I said so.
That's right. And so the question that you ask goes back to Jesus. We have to make peace with who we believe Jesus of Nazareth to be. If he's the Christ, then the Bible has to be true because he believed it to be true.
Sure.
If Jesus is not the Christ, therefore not God, and he's crazy, then you know what? Pick up a different book because this book has zero value to you.
Right. And yeah, your reasoning, if you're walking down that line, there probably needs to be a discussion of where your mental state is with all this too.
Yeah.
I mean, so one of the places, as we talk about this, as we talk about, how can we show that Christianity is real? Now, I read a book years ago, and it was at a phase in my life where I wasn't sure.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I've always believed in God. I've always believed in Christ.
Yeah.
if you're not asking questions, in my mind,
Yes.
you're not really seeking the truth.
Well, yeah, we have that as doubting Thomas, right? Like in
Right.
church history, doubting Thomas gets kind of a bad rap.
Right.
But Jesus never condemns him for the questions that he's asking,
Right.
right? And in fact, like there's a fair level of skepticism even in me as a pastor. And when it comes to that skepticism, do I allow it to drive me away, or do I allow it to lead me to investigate this further?
Absolutely. And that's one of those things where I've found a lot deeper faith, because at some point I have to say, I believe that.
Yeah.
Even if I can't hold it in my hand and say, I see it, I can believe it.
Yeah.
And now I have the Bible, but I read a book by Lee Strobel,
Uh-huh.
who is probably one of the most well-known
Uh-huh.
when it comes to a book about Jesus, and it's The Case for Christ.
Yeah.
I encourage people to pick it up.
Yeah.
I encourage people to watch the movie because it's a phenomenal story. A man who was ardently atheist,
Trying to debunk Christianity.
and it ended up turning on him.
Yep.
And now, I tell you what, Lee, if you're out there, if you get this, people, if anybody knows Lee Strobel, tell him that we'd love to have him on the show. I'll kick Matt out. Matt's gone. This is not a problem.
Stu and Lee interview.
I would love to sit down with Lee Strobel, because it's not just the, hey, you need to believe this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, unfortunately, in religious circles, in things like that, the teaching is, well, you should just believe.
Yeah.
Because everybody else feels that way. You should just believe.
Mm-hmm.
And he took that and he said, and I'm wildly paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But it's, if you look at the history of the Bible and the way history has been passed on before print, it was all done through oral history.
Mm-hmm.
And these oral histories, I mean, people took great care in making sure that the oral histories that they were passing on were accurate. I mean, this is how their livelihood and their, everything about these people was passed on.
Yeah.
And eventually was written down and became our Bible in a lot of cases. So it's one of those that, we talk about Christ. And for me, that's the one that really cemented it at home for me. I've gone to church since I was old enough to walk.
Yeah.
My parents and I went to we went to a Catholic church forever. College hit, and I wasn't real faithful.
Yeah.
Long story. Got married. My lovely wife said, "Hey, we're going to church." I went, "Sure." And, it kind of went from there. But when I could see the history behind it, the historical context, and it made such a difference for me.
Yeah.
Personally. And that's just because of who I am. I'm an information, black hole. I want to know it. I want to hear it. So,
one of those, to that point, one of the things, like when we go to Israel, so every couple of years we do a trip to Israel, and one of the places that we always hit is where the Essenes had lived, kind of in these desert caves, and the Essenes took time to copy and write all basically the Old Testament. And in the 1940s, maybe early 1950s, these scrolls were found completely on accident, actually by a Muslim kid. And when they were brought forth, there's a whole museum in Israel now of what is known as the Dead Sea Scrolls,
right.
which are some of the oldest documents that we have of anything, and some of the closest documents that we have to what would be considered original. And that was a game changer in terms of textual criticism, right? And the validity of the Bible, more so than the writings of Julius Caesar, right? Or pick your historical. We have more documentation from a textual criticism standpoint of the Bible and of the life of Jesus than we have of any other historical figure from that time period, or really for the next 1,500 years, to be honest with you.
Right, absolutely.
And so, yeah, there is a lot in that when it comes to the historical understanding and the textual criticism. And that road is a deep, deep dive and a deep road. And still, with all of that, it comes to the place, what do you believe about Jesus?
Absolutely.
Do you trust him as your Lord and Savior, that he is who he says he is? And if so, then we better pay attention to everything that the Bible has to say,
Right.
and try to devote our lives to his teachings, or, man, find another thing.
Yeah, Harry
Eat,
Potter
drink, and be merry.
being re-released. So
Yeah.
all I'm saying, well, and you talk about that, and you talk um, about all of the, you talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff like that, and I pay attention. I'm a tech nerd. I pay attention on X.
Yeah.
I got a couple guys that I follow, and they post things like proof that Christ lived.
Yeah.
And in the Catholic Church, and it's a whole nother story, whole nother thing. One of the things Catholic churches do is they have a historical relic of some nature in every church.
Mm-hmm.
Every church has a historical relic. Now, some of them are, you're like, really,
Right.
guys, are we giving up? But others, you're talking about. I mean, they have crown of thorns.
Mm-hmm.
They have pieces from the original cross.
Yeah.
You have all of these things, and you take that, and taken which denomination and everything that came out of, you have these historical pieces that are associated with Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this Bible that, number one, you have the Gospels, where you have 4 men that tell the story, and they're all, and you can follow. I mean, if you want to be a tech nerd, there are things out there where they map out how the Bible relates to different parts of the Bible. And when Jesus says this, he's referencing this. And then, I mean, it's an incredible picture. It looks like a beautiful spider web of information.
Yeah.
But I guess to me, the question is when they say, is your religion one of the stories? I have to say, how can it not be real when you have this kind of information?
Yeah.
So I guess that's where I go with it. Is, from a spiritual thing, I've gotten there. It's been a long journey.
Yeah.
Faith is a tough thing to come to terms with sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't believe it's a story. I believe that's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. I do too. And I think that's a good place for us to at least put a bow on this. You can go back to your Reddit spaces and
anybody wants to
share
be there in Reddit. No, I'm not going to share my
share your information there. So I want to thank everybody for joining us on this podcast. Hopefully you found this discussion helpful. Stu found like 15 more questions that people are asking in this 85,000 group Reddit feed on theology and religion and Christianity. And so maybe we'll hit a few more of these into the future. But Stu, thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. We will see you around next time.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening to Collision. This podcast is a production of Crossroads Church in Thornton, Colorado. For more excellent content, please visit crossroadsabc.com.